Hi, my name's John Beaudry. This is the second video in a series of uh, 4 videos based on my book, Garden Sanctuary, Designing for Comfort, Wholeness, and Connection. It's a how-to garden design book. And in the last video, we talked about, it was actually a series of videos, we talked about the vocabulary of design, and those include the principles of design, which include the elements, which are line, form, color, texture, and the principles, which are harmony, unity, balance, repetition, things like that. So hopefully you've got a little familiarity with that. Now we're going to actually get into the designing process. How do you actually come up with a design? Where do you begin? Okay, so this is it. You want to start with taking measurements in the field, and then we're going to collect those measurements in an organized way. We're going to transfer them to a piece of permanent paper. We're going to start with a sketch, and then we're going to transfer them to some permanent paper. And then on that permanent paper, we're going to create a scaled drawing, which is we're going to call the base plan of the property as it exists before we started designing. This base plan is going to be the key, and upon which you're going to draw several other layers, which will help you flush out your design. So in the same way that we have a unique vocabulary, we also have a unique set of tools that we use to do drawings, to make drawings. We're going to use some high quality paper, some vellum paper. We're going to use some tracing paper. Tracing paper is a very fine tissue-like paper that's transparent, so that if we lay it over what we're going to call our base plan, we'll be able to see those lines and draw over that and see through both layers. Those come in rolls, or you can buy them in sheets. And we're going to use an architect scale. An architect scale is already pre-measured to have the 1/8 inch marks on the scale, so that you don't have to do the counting for you. You can just count the number of 1/8 of an inch, and that will give you your dimension. So I'm going to get into scale and how we do that in a minute. But then you want to get some drafting tape. It's like a masking tape. It's typically blue in color, although I think they have all kinds of colors now. But it's not quite as sticky as masking tape, and it will you can pin your tracing paper down over your base plan with this tape and be able to peel it off and not tear the paper. So you want to get some of that. You want a drafting triangle, which will help you draw right angles, and several well-sharpened pencils. And you might think about, if you're going to do this professionally, you want to be able to use different line weights, and the way to achieve that is to use different pencil weights. You can get like a number 2 pencil is the most common, but if you get a heavier weight pencil, it's going to give a lighter line. If you get a lower weight pencil, you're going to get a darker line. So it's a great way to get a little bit of variation in your drawings. You want to get a good eraser. An eraser called a kneaded eraser is one that comes in a little square block. It's gray, and you can actually knead it like putty with your fingers, and it does a really good job of taking off the lead without damaging the paper or leaving any eraser marks on the paper. You'll find you'll probably be doing a lot of erasing in the beginning. I certainly did. Then you want to get a shorter, like a regular tape measure, where you can, like a 25-foot tape measure, which is good for measuring, like the width of a window. But if I want to measure the width of the property, I want to have a 100-foot tape, so that I don't have to do it in 4 rounds of 25 foot. So that's pretty much the supplies that you're going to need. I've mentioned several times the idea of drawing to scale. Let's clarify what that is. So in a scale drawing, some number of inches is going to equal some number of feet. So we've got a 100-foot wide property, for example. I don't know if it's exactly 100 feet or not, but we're going to say 100 feet. If we want to draw that 100 feet on a piece of paper, we need to shrink it down. The most common scale that architects use is 1/8 inch equals 1 foot. Landscape architects typically use more like a 1 to 10 or 1 to 20 scale, because they've got really big buildings and they're putting them onto a really small piece of paper. Most people's yards fall within between 30 feet wide and 100 feet wide, and that will fit on an 11 by 17 inch piece of paper. So for example, if you've got a 90-foot wide lot, to come up with how many inches that is, that's 11.25 inches. That tells me right away that this property, if it's 100 feet wide, is not going to fit on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. I need a bigger piece of paper to draw the drawing and be able to have comments around the drawing, like indicating what's what on there. So now you're ready to start drawing. For the first step, I suggest taking just a blank piece of paper, it doesn't matter how big or how small, something that's convenient for you to carry around in your yard as you're getting measurements. And do a quick sketch of the house. So basically, you know, if it's just a long rectangular house, you just draw a big rectangle. On our house, we have a wing that protrudes out from the house, 2 wings actually. There's the garage and there's this part over here. And we want to just do a little sketch that shows this in, out of the house. And then we're gonna use that to collect our field measurements. So draw your little sketch and then draw a north arrow indicating which way north is, so that you're always knowing where that is on the drawing. You want to start by measuring the first measure the property lines. So this one is pretty easy. It's just a rectangular lot, and from this corner to that corner, and we'll say it's 100 feet. And then you want to measure from that corner all the way to the back property line and mark that point, mark that distance on your drawing. And then you've got the other two dimensions. If you know it's a rectangular lot, you only need the one side and the front or the back. It doesn't matter. Most cities, you can go to the county website and get a plat map of your property. It's called a plat map, and it will show the dimensions of the property and the shape of it, so you have a sense of where to begin. It doesn't typically show where the house is on the property. In some states, with the real estate transactions, it requires a plat map that indicates all existing features of the house and the walkways drawn up. That's a really big help if you can get that, but here in California they don't offer that, so it's not required, so it's typically not given. Okay, so you're going to do the property line first, and then we're going to start with a corner of the house. I like to start on the right corner and work my way left. First thing you want to do is plot where the corner of the house is. The word plot I want to define. So people are often afraid of drawing and tell me that they don't have any skills drawing. You don't need to have any drawing skills to be able to construct. This is the construction of a drawing of the property. So everything is plotted. So when I say plotted, we're going to say, where do I locate that corner of the house on the piece of paper? So to figure that out, I'm going to measure from my property line in the front to the corner, and from my property line on the side to the corner. That's 2 measurements for everything that we're going to plot. So we know that it's, say, 30 feet from here to the corner and 6 feet from the side to the corner, and then we pinpoint that point on the drawing. Then you're going to take and start measuring from the corner of the house this way. And there's 2 ways to do it. You can measure from the property line to the house and say that's 6 feet, and then from the corner of the house to the first window is maybe 2 feet, and then the width of the window is, say, 8 feet, and then 2 feet to the next corner, and then the house comes out from there. Okay, that's one way. The only problem with doing it that way is if you fudge your measurements as you're going along and it's not quite accurate, by the time you get to that end of the house, you could be way off. So to avoid that, what I like to do is lay a tape out on the ground. We can't do that from here, but I would do it up closer to the house, and I would say, okay, I just lay it down and I look and I say, okay, the corner of the house is at 6 feet, the first window is at 8 feet, the edge of the window, the next edge of the window is at, it would be 8 plus the 2 would be at 10 feet, and then say it's another 3 feet to the corner, then you've got, you mark whatever the tape says. You want to mark the dimensions of the tape says, and that way if you're a little off on where the window was, you're still on for the rest of it. It keeps you on track better. So there are drawings that are in the book that you can refer to, and I'm also including them in this video along with it. So once you've got the footprint of the house and the windows located, then you can start measuring the sidewalks. So come on over here for a sec. You see we've got a sidewalk that's coming out from the house. It doesn't come out straight, so we need to take some extra measurements of how the curve goes and how many feet over. We're going to draw up everything that's existing so that we can quantify what it's going to cost to take out the existing patio. We can say, okay, we've got 150 square feet of patio we need to remove, and we can quantify that. And then so you're gonna then go around and measure all of the existing surfaces, the walkways, the driveway, any patio areas that might be in the back or the front. Get that all drawn, and then you go and you plot the plants next. So for example, with this tree over here, just like measuring the corner of the house, we're going to measure the distance from the curb to the tree, and we'll say that's 20 feet. So that's 28ths of an inch on your paper up to, and you mark a spot there. Then you go measure from the property line to the house or to the tree, and that's say that's 15 feet. So you'll measure 15/8 of an inch to that point and do a plus sign there. Then you want to mark where the canopy of the tree is, and so we can look out here and we can say, oh wow, the canopy of the tree is pretty much to the property line over here. And over on this side, it's coming, you want to actually measure it from the side property line all the way over to here, and say that's like, 40 feet or so. The canopy of this tree is quite large. And then you can draw in that canopy. It's called, the edges of the branches are called the drip line. So wherever if it had been a rain and the rain's over and I go stand under the tree, the leaves are still dripping on me when I'm in the drip line. When I'm outside the drip line, I'm not getting dripped on anymore. So you want to write down the drip line of the tree on your drawing. That's going to tell you where you have shade. You want to think about, and I had mentioned putting the north arrow on your plan to show where north is, because that's going to help you determine where the shadows are. So typically north on most plans and maps is up the top of the page. If your house is a strange shape and it fits better on the page with north being to the right or the left, it's not a big deal so long as you know and keep track of it. But if you want to work with other people and follow a convention, it's best to keep north to the top of the page. So then let's see, we've got and a lot of times houses will not sit exactly north, and it's actually easier to do the drawing with the house being actually up and down and vertical on the vertical and horizontal on the page, and have the property lines all be tweaked, because it's just hard to measure angles and everything if your house is sitting crooked on the lot. So, and a lot of houses are. Okay, so we've got we've measured the footprint of the house, then we've measured the windows, then we measured the hard surfaces around the house and the trees. That's if there are any outlying structures, you want to indicate that as well. That is the essence of your base plan. When you've got all those things done, you've got your base plan finalized. So, but you've started with a sketch, and then you collected measurements, then you refined the footprint of the house, so you've got a scale drawing of the footprint of the house. Then you can take a copy of that scale drawing and go out and collect more measurements for the windows and all these other things. And if you do it in steps, you don't have so many crazy measurements on your piece of paper. It gets really confusing, believe me. And again, I want to go back over the base plan. You've created a sketch and collected measurements of the footprint of your house. Then you've gone and drawn that up to scale. That's the beginning of your base plan. Then you take a copy of that base plan and go out and get more field measurements. This time you're going to get windows. Then you go back and update your drawing again. Then come back out with another copy and get the walkways and all of that. And go back and draw those things onto this to scale onto the base plan. Then go out and measure trees, any existing structures, or anything else you want to add into it. That's the completed base plan. So then the next thing is you want to go through a site questionnaire. In my book, at the back of it, I have a questionnaire. It asks all kinds of questions about the property, about your lifestyle choices, and your favorite times of day, and all those kind of things. As you're doing that, you might think of things that you want to indicate on your site analysis, which is the next step. So a site analysis, you're going to take your completed base plan out. You can take a copy of it, or what I suggest is taking a copy of a piece of this tracing paper and lay it over the drawing, over your base plan, and go around and start indicating things like, oh, there's shade on the north side of the house here, and it comes out about this far. And this tree is this is all of a shady area over here, which could be a nice place to sit under the shade of the tree. Then you want to indicate any drainage problems, any place that water stands, any above utility lines like we have here. I don't want to plant a tree that's going to go right up into these wires. Like I said, sun and shade patterns, wet areas or drainage issues, any views that you want to be sure and enhance or block. A lot of times we have a neighbor that collects a lot of junk and we don't want to look at their yard, or we have, they're not a nice guy or a girl and we want to keep them out of our life and keep them from looking at us. So, we need privacy here. If you want to have a vegetable garden, you want to indicate sunny areas that might work for a vegetable garden. And you can start indicating assets and liabilities of the property. So that's the site analysis. You might even indicate any wind patterns that there are, and like I said, anything that you thought of on the question through creating the questionnaire. Then the next thing you're going to do, and this is one of the secrets to coming up with a design that really relates house and garden. You want to, the grid line is, you're looking for the secret dimensions of the house. And most houses, most of the rooms are similar size. If you got a really big house, you tend to have big bedrooms, big rooms. If you have a smaller house, you tend to have smaller rooms. They all tend to be proportionate to each other. And it's really nice to extend the rooms outside in the garden to be similar to the sizes of the rooms in the house. So there's a couple of ways to come up with a grid. First of all, we can look at where like for example, the distance from that end of the house to here, and from here to there is about the same, and from there to there is about the same, and from there to there is about the same. So that's starting to give me a sense of a proportion, and I can try to create a grid. And it might be, if you can try, so say, maybe 15-foot squares that would begin to make a grid that fit the rooms of the house extending out into the yard. I explain it a lot more detail in the book. Another way to come up with an enhancement to the grid is lines of force. So where the house protrudes out is a line of force, and we want to extend that line out into the garden, and extend from this corner over here out, and from the corner of the garage out, and then look at that, and that might give us some. Oftentimes you'll find a little bit of a uniformity in those protrusions. And then, so say they're averaging 15 or 20 feet, then you would create lines going the other way, and that will give you proportions to begin to think about, oh, I could make a patio out in this space, and relate it to the proportions of the house. Then you can take yet another sheet of paper. So each of the lines of force will be on a tracing paper over the base plan. Now, then the site analysis will be on another piece of paper. Now you're going to take another piece of paper and you're going to do what's called a bubble diagram. So a bubble diagram is starting to look at everything that you put in the site analysis and everything that you put in your questionnaire about how you want to use the space. Oftentimes people will say to me, what would you do here if it were your house? And I'm like, well, I can come up with lots of ideas, but if it doesn't suit how you're going to use your garden, what good is it to you? So I always put the question right back to people and say, how do you imagine using this space? Are you prone to come out and want to play bocce ball? Are you more prone to come out and sit around a fire pit? Are you more prone to entertaining and having dining and living areas for guests? So all of that is really influential in determining how to use your garden. So with the bubble diagram, you can start to just do loose bubbles that show, this would be a good place for a seating area. This would be a good place for a vegetable garden. This area I want to do something to deal with the drainage. This area I want to do something to block the view. In this area I want to do something to frame the view and accentuate the view. So all of that gets indicated, and then once you've collected all that, you'll set that aside, and we have yet another layer to do. So this time you start to this is where you come up with patterns to create the layout for the garden. So remember now, we haven't done any drawing really. We've done loose bubble diagram, which is just loosey-goosey, just keep it really free. Just do like a little oval or a little kidney bean shape to this would be good for that, or this would be good for that. And then you take your grid and you lay it over your base plan, and then lay your bubble diagram over that, and maybe even maybe you could alternate with your bubble diagram and your site analysis and begin to use patterns and shapes that you create out of just it could be just using two colors where you shade in areas of the grid and say, okay, we had a sunny area over here would be a good place for vegetables. So then you can begin to say, okay, this would be a good place for vegetables, and you can kind of block out that area and then block out. And I give in the book several examples of how we can play with the grid to get a rectilinear design. You could turn the grid on an angle once you've got it created, and then have rectilinear lines but set at an angle in the garden, so the patterns begin to be more triangle shaped. And then you can do another one where it's more freeform lines, but you're basically allowing the design to evolve through the different layers that you've created. So now you have your base plan and all of the different layers. You've created a grid. You've identified the lines of force. You've got a bubble diagram that's organizing the space. You've got pattern drawings which create patterns that can become spaces in the garden. You've got all of your wants and needs in the questionnaire. We've got the lines of force, which will help also influence. It's nice those lines of force really speak to the dimensions of the house, so it really helps to align patio areas with those lines of force. Then you've got your bubble diagram, which shows you how you want to use your space, and the pattern drawings, which are going to help you put it all together. So all of these layers become the structure for conceiving your garden design.